When you hear the phrase soft as steel, what do you think of? While the word steel might conjure up images such as massive high rise buildings, where does the soft part come in? And what exactly does this mean in our work and in our lives? Welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran, featuring engaging conversations with a wide range of industry leaders around soft skills, how we practice love, inclusion, social justice, and compassionate leadership that's everlasting in the workplace. And now, here's Dennis Duran.
My guest today is Pat Skodje. Pat joined Coatings Unlimited, an industrial coatings contractor, just over a year ago to lead their Minneapolis St. Paul office. He was hired as part of the firm's commitment to invest in their customers and their people. I first met Pat several years ago during his long career with a leading painting contractor, Swanson & Youngdale, where he worked for over 20 years. Bob Swanson is a dear friend of mine, and I know he's someone who's a dear friend and respected by Pat as well. My first impression of Pat was actually pretty simple. This guy gets what soft skills are all about and why they're so important. He clearly possessed all the technical knowledge and skills to do his job. What set him apart is that he conveyed through his words and actions great leadership, built on the foundation of soft skills. His boss at Coatings Unlimited was very clear about why Pat was hired by that company. He said, "We knew Pat would fill the leadership role and help us attract the talented craft folks it takes to successfully serve our customers." Pat grew up in the trades and has been in the coatings industry for over 30 years. Pat, welcome to the Soft as Steel podcast.
Thanks, Dennis. I appreciate you having me on. Look forward to the conversation.
Did I do okay with your introduction, or did I make you sound like a serial painting contractor?
You did make me sound like a serial painting contractor. However, that is who I am. Frankly, I've been very lucky to work with some of the best people in the industry. And as you mentioned, Bob Swanson was a great mentor and is a great mentor for the trade. But beyond that, Bob really puts his heart into the people around him. And that was a lesson that was instilled in me, not just in his actions, but as you said, in words beyond that, going to in the field, working with people and working with vendors and creating a team across the board.
Yeah. You spent 20 years with Bob at Swanson & Youngdale. I think he had stepped down from his executive leadership role before you left Swanson & Youngdale, or about the same time, somewhere in that window.
A few years before I left, 2 to 3 years before I left.
Yeah. You're lucky to have all that time with him. And now you're working with a guy who I just met for the first time and having him as a guest on this podcast. I've been reading his almost daily postings on LinkedIn. He's got an active mind. He's thinking about a lot of different things. And he's a guy that I would also say, almost by virtue of the fact that during our conversation, he said different things. You may recall this if you had a chance to listen to it carefully. There were a number of things that he said using the exact same words that I would use to talk about them. And so we had a little bit of fun with each other, say, well, did you say that? Or did I say that? Or did I say it first? Did you say it first? But the joy for that in me was that he manifests through what he had to say and how he talked about all these different things, that he too is a guy that gets it. So it's not surprising that the opportunity that you have with Coatings Unlimited was born, at least in part, by familiarity, because you knew each other, but also by virtue of the fact, without even them being spoken words, you both are on pretty much the same page as it relates to this notion of what soft skills are, whether we call them that for all this time. I didn't coin the phrase, but I introduced the phrase and connected it to the construction industry in 2019 with my book. But Bob Swanson, a great leader, gets it, has always gotten it the way you just described it. And Steve is the same way. There's something about you that has come about by virtue of the fact that you've had now a combined total of, let's say, 20 years in total between the two of being under the watchful eye of two great leaders.
Yes. I can't count my blessings enough to have learned the lessons I have, watching others, being part of what grew businesses into great entities that took care of their people and created a family-like environment. And it is what attracted me to Coatings Unlimited.
Yeah.
After I left Swanson Youngdale, and I was given the opportunity to work with a consulting firm to see the world through the eyes of the client, which really intrigued me. that I'd spent my career first as a field painter, then as an office side in the estimating, project management, leadership. But I was from the side of the contractor. And when the opportunity came along to spend some time on the other side to see what the world was like through their eyes, I really couldn't turn it down. Mm-hmm. And to see that the strife that they have and the struggles they have are the same. We're people, we're in the people business. However, they're coming at it from a different angle. Mm-hmm. And applying what I learned from my years with others and then working with people who may have a little different angle. Engineers and constructors have a different mindset, and we need each other, but we're still people. And to have spent a couple of years during doing that was so valuable that coming back to contracting, when I saw Coatings Unlimited and I saw an opportunity, I approached Steve with it, that I think the world needs more empathy in what we do. Mm-hmm. We're struggling in the world, we're struggling in construction, but we have the same problems. We have the labor shortages. Luckily, the material shortages seem to be waning at this point, but we're all working together to try to build something. We're doing more with less, and to bridge that gap and kind of extend an olive branch now, it was a lot of fun. Yeah. But now to be back on this side, I think I can work a little better angle in helping complete a project successfully, even a difficult project, but working with the owner through a different light at this point.
Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit more specifically about what maybe the 2 or 3 most important things you learned from that period? You were in that position for roughly 2 years?
Correct.
Yeah, that was so. Yeah, you left Swanson Youngdale. You went to this other company for about 2 years, and then you went on to Coatings.
Correct.
So in that 2-year period where you had this learning, what were the 2 or 3 most valuable things that you learned about, as you said it so correctly, about the people part of business?
Oh, Dennis, being on the contracting side, and often as the subcontractor, I had somewhat of a false vision or impression that the owners had a better idea of what they're looking for. And I don't mean this in any bad way or any judgmental way, but I did learn that a lot of my work was public work. So through city public work directors and city superintendents, they have such a large work scope and plate that when they come to hire an engineer, a contractor, a specialty contractor, they're really relying on the expertise. Now they're working, like I said, they're trying to do more with less, like the rest of us are. But the one big one I came across with in how to approach my clients now is not to make a judgment call that, well, you should know. You've hired me because we are the experts, and we do want to work with you, and then approach that on a peaceful problem-solving method, not going into the old contracting way of the bull of the china shop and we're going to worry and fight and all that. We're going to work together from the beginning. And then probably more to that on a similar note, but from the engineering side, is that we have engineering and design firms that are trying to design and build things out of very little data. They're told that they need to develop a wastewater treatment plant that will process so many millions of gallons of water. Well, there's nothing there for them to start with, and they have to put this together. So again, the empathy on that side of what they're working with, we should not approach them as contractors that they're doing things because we're adversarial. They're making judgment calls, so they're trying to design. But if we see things that we can help them with, and by bringing in maybe a vendor or a specification writer with a better idea, we should offer those up. And we should do this on a trustworthy basis.
Good. What are the, over the course of just the last several years, let's use a time frame, a couple of years as you were finishing up at Swanson, your transitional role, and then this new position at Coatings. What have you seen over that span of 5 years as it relates to trying to incorporate more of, again, my term, soft skills into how relationships are developed and forged? What was it like 5 years ago? And what have you seen change over the last 5 years, hopefully in a positive way, but also if some things haven't changed or may have deteriorated? What are your thoughts?
I think there's been a paradigm shift in about everything just in the last 5 years. Now, granted, we had a pandemic, we had material issues, but we have a generational change, we have an age gap. And I think that the critical point for myself is to start to bring forth a message very strongly, the people skills of working together, no matter who you are or what part of the puzzle you are. And that includes reaching out for apprentices and workers and attracting people and giving them a path. So when we meet with an apprentice, we meet with a potential employee or even a client, giving that message up front that we're here to be your partner, we're here to help and to listen, which, as a salesperson and as a contractor is a very difficult thing at times. I want to get my point across. I want to do this. I want to do that. But we need to listen more to their needs and then offer up what we can do to help them and build a path.
Mm-hmm. So listening, I talk about it often. It's an important part of the process of communication that's necessary to gain understanding and build relationships. And listening is the hardest part. We're just in general, most folks, regardless of their personalities or behavioral styles, most of us are not that good at doing it. And it's a huge challenge. And I think developing understanding of people, particularly, you touched on the notion of generational differences. And we certainly are dealing with that now. Roughly 1/3 of the adult age workforce is comprised of Gen Z, and so we're shifting the proportions. The baby boomers are continuing to decline to the grave, but that's life, and so a lot of that stuff is changing. So as when you stepped into your role in the Minneapolis-St. Paul office, again, your company is Missouri-based, does work in a number of states, but got a heavy concentration in and around its office. So when you basically open that office for them.
Correct, I did.
All right. And so the idea was we want somebody boots on the ground that can identify opportunities, pursue opportunities, build clients, build a workforce, and serve our customers in the way that we want to serve them. What was the experience of starting something? In many ways, starting something new, starting a brand new operation.
It was exciting, and it still is. That was the challenge that I saw, that there's an opportunity in a market where we can expand and provide a good quality product and service, and working with the Coatings Unlimited's values, which aligned with mine. And walking into that office, as you mentioned that you and Steve would wonder, did I say that? Did you say that? From my first trip to that office, we had the same experience. Mm-hmm. We're saying the same things, we're talking the same lingo, but we have the same goals. So coming into this market was just an extension of the company where I had the backing, and then myself and some of the employees that have come on, we had the network that's there. Mm-hmm. We had the client base, we had the reputation. So the excitement, that drive out there we're going to do our first job. Then we're going to, have our first great month in sales. We're going to get our first return business from a client. Although we knew the people and they knew us in the area, you're still new. Mm-hmm. You're wearing a different hard hat. What can you do if things change? So the fun of that, the excitement, the days can be long. And when I look around and say, hey, who's going to take care of? And I kind of look around my office. I remember, oh yeah, it's just me. So you learn to be more self-sufficient. But in my career, I did spend most of my career working in divisions or remote portions of the country and doing out of town work. So that portion fit in pretty well. Mm-hmm. But it's fun. It's fun to look back a little over a year later and say, hey, we're on track to do what our goals were. We're laying a good foundation. We're getting the calls. We're getting the people to come on board. And a fun one has been we're working with the training center and the union. A lot of conversations and how can we help some of the committees, and then they're asking us what can they do for us. So what can we do to work together and make this work for everyone?
Good, good. Have you been successful in getting apprentice hires into your workforce?
Yeah, we have. Actually, we just brought one on last week, a brand new one, young man. Looking forward to bringing this kid up through the ranks and giving him a path. He's a remote worker out in a remote part of this adjoining state, wanted to try something different, and we were really happy to have him, getting him trained up, and can't wait to watch him flourish.
Yeah. So as we are having this conversation today, there are still challenges out there everywhere. We went through the pandemic. No need to discuss that in detail. It was 2+ years of our lives that were impacted in a permanent way. Even though, fortunately, in our industry, we weren't shut down for extended periods of time. They were almost momentary. But then we had to do everything we could to figure out what we needed to do in order to make our workers safe, in addition to dealing with all the basic, traditional, and expanding safety-related requirements, particularly in your segment of the industry, dealing with coatings, which again has significantly greater amount of regulation, requirements, et cetera, that you have to deal with. Your workforce right now, is it? Can you profile it? Again, not numbers necessarily, but in terms of generational mix. How many millennials are you still relying on? How many baby boomers? What's your workforce kind of look like right now that you're leading?
I think my workforce is pretty diverse. I'll give it that, and we are intentionally recruiting the younger generation, whether they're journey workers or they're apprentices. But I myself, as I sit and look with people of my age, that we don't have that many years left to transition things over to a new leadership. So what are we going to do? So if we have people, let's bring them on and train them. I would say the most difficult workforce to recruit is between age 35 and 45.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably the biggest gap. And we would love to have them, but that's a tough one to fill. That's that gap in the trades.
Do you think that? Your segment of the industry is tough. It's incredibly hard work. It's by several factors even more dangerous than just traditional commercial painting or even traditional industrial painting versus coatings. It's a tough industry. Is that a hard sell to try to get people to come in, given the nature of what the coatings world is all about?
I don't feel it is that I don't feel that it's been a detriment. I think we're up front. There's a lot of pride in what we do, and that has to be part of your path and your journey. We can help you get to the tasks, learning the tasks, the certifications, and being competent in your job. But you have to take pride in what you do as well. And there is pride in knowing that some of these things are very difficult to do, but when you're done, the owners recognize it, the contractors recognize it, and we as employers recognize it. And I think one thing I've learned from Bob Swanson, and you can't say enough about the guy, anyone who knows him, but Bob was a person who would get right in there. If you're on the job at night working and it's tough, Bob will come there.
Mm-hmm.
Bob will be by your side. He won't do your work, obviously, but he'll be there to support you.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always appreciated that and tried to carry that forward as well, that if we have a night crew going, we should be there to support them.
Mm-hmm.
We should be available. If they're out of town, I don't ask employees to do things that I won't do myself. I've traveled my entire career. So when I ask an employee to go on the road and spend time away from their family, I know the hardships of it. And I'm willing to be there as well. And that's where Steve Jr. with Coatings Unlimited has done the same. This has been his life. He's been there. He's lived it. part of I think the good tie together and values of what we've seen.
Yeah. How much of an issue are you facing as it relates to what is a growing problem in our industry, having to do with mental health, addiction, suicide? How are you carrying the message about that, which really is, it's certainly about our people, and it falls within the range of both inclusion in my terminology, but also it's a social justice matter. How are you dealing with that every day as in a leadership role?
I'm lucky that Coatings Unlimited behind this 100%. We do weekly operational call-in meetings with field people, and Steve has been really at the forefront of putting out there the message that we have resources and we're here for you, or we can direct you. Now, we may not be experts, but we can get you to the right people, and that's the message I carry forward to the field staff, that the training center, the Upper Midwest, and the DC 82, which is our home local, have all the resources to help the people. So if an employee, if it gets to me that they're down, if there's something going wrong or something's off, whether I ask or ask a supervisor to ask, tell them it's okay not to be okay. And if they need help, let's help them. Let's get them there. If they need a day off, if they're having problems, just be empathetic to this and help them through it. Don't make them forge through it on their own. Just give them resources to help themselves.
You've mentioned both the Midwest, FTI Midwest, and also DC 82. Again, they're also very visible on LinkedIn, postings by John Burkaw. I think what I see there is that you do have the benefit of an active partner in both 82 and that training center. Has that been your experience?
Absolutely. John Burkaw has just been welcoming with open arms to any discussion we want to have, any resources, any ideas we have, and then to hear about, which I really get, I might be a bit of a nerd, but I get really excited when I hear about the opportunities that they're providing this future workforce, whether it's the training or the counseling or the PSEO programs, community outreach. We're really, really doing a great job getting out there, trying to bring on that next generation of workforce, which is my workforce.
Yeah.
Without them, I don't have people. So really excited, and John's just hell of a leader.
Yes, he's an interesting man. This is one of those times. It's unfortunate that this is an audio podcast, because otherwise I would be able to comment as I'm seeing you on the screen while we're having this conversation with your little goatee thing going on, and then of course I would compare that to the massive quantity of facial hair that our good friend John Burkaw possesses. And my guess is he's going to listen to this podcast. This will not be edited out. So again, this is a good example of what I said at the outset, that I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. But it's all relating to people, both individually as well as collectively. And again, I think it's interesting and I hope instructive to listeners to hear a leader in an organization, a pretty good size contracting company, doing business in a number of states. Under a very energetic and animated second or third generation family member. They were founded in like 1954, I think.
Yeah, the original company was, and Steve Jr.'s third generation.
Third generation, which is also something which is a characteristic of certainly the finishing trades part of the construction industry, and that is that there are relatively few companies that are very large companies. Many of them, I would say, the simple majority are either small and or privately held or family owned businesses. And so certainly, Coatings Unlimited falls within that description. How does that how do you see that notion that this is a third generation company? Connect the dots between that and this observation that I've shared with you with regards to its leader, Steve, being really getting the idea of soft skills. How do you connect that to the roots of and the origins of their company?
I think that the values of the family have really transpired through. That those are some deep, deep core values into the roots of what's made them who they are.
Mm-hmm.
And what attracted me to the company as well is that family style. And you can many people take family business under a lot of different ideas, but the idea is that we all work for each other and work together through good and bad.
Mm-hmm.
And we will all have those bad times. So that having a passionate leader in front of you just helps guarantee that we're here for the long haul. We're going to work hard. We're all going to pull through this together. People make mistakes. Everybody does. And we learn to, get past those mistakes. We want to learn from each other's mistakes. And then we look forward to carrying this on to the next generation.
Yeah.
Whoever that might be.
So my mentor, and again, in my book, he wrote the foreword to the book, and I mention him fairly regularly when I give speeches. A guy named Steve Farber said a couple of interesting things. One, he said, do what you love in the service of people who love what you do. And he also then most recently wrote a book that's entitled Love is Just Damn Good Business. How do those two sets of phrases relate to you? I mean, can you relate to the idea that love is good in business, that you need to love what you do? Can you relate to that? And if so, how?
I can. And I have listened to the audiobooks from Steve, and I found it quite interesting.
Mm-hmm.
The passion for what you do, love what you do. I have to say, Dennis, I kind of stumbled into this craft, and I love to ask people when I meet them who are in this business, how'd you get into it?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best one I ever heard was, well, I fell in ass backwards. And I can relate to that. It was something that came along and happened. And I was lucky enough to find that I really liked it. So I love what I do, and I come to work every day, and I'm excited to do it even through good times and bad. And if you do that, and if you share that passion with those around you, it'll grow.
Mm-hmm.
And their passions will grow on you.
Mm-hmm.
So as we spread that around and we promote the idea of being a team, being a group, and that we care about each other, I think that love will grow. And, I grew up in an earlier generation where at the onset of my career in the trades, you didn't talk about love. And, you punched each other in the arm and you called each other names. But we've grown past that. And we can stand on job sites and we can talk about caring. We can talk about people and helping. So taking that and then running with it. And then as personally as I grew, my career moved along, I found more reward in helping others.
Yeah.
I can bid a job, I can sell a job, and that's a lot of fun. But what's been the most fun is watching people around me who were asking for help and then helping them set a development plan and give them the opportunity to flourish on what they're good at. And with that, I surely know very little, and I can prove that given enough time, but getting people into a skills assessment or an opportunity for them to show you or demonstrate what they've been good at, what they love, and plant some seeds and water them and watch them grow. And that's the fun. And I think that's where we really share the love and build that team and build the camaraderie, is helping others achieve. So as we that are probably reach the apex of our careers are looking to watch other people grow and get the same enjoyment and fun and pass that trait on to others.
Yeah. We're getting close to the end of our time together, unfortunately, but I want to ask you an easy question. And this may be our closing question. If I were to ask someone who knew you very well to give me 3 or 4 statements or words that describe why they view you as a great leader, what would they say?
I actually had someone say this when I left my previous job. And I asked that. I said, so what did I do moving forward? I want to know. And they said, well, Pat, Some people will tell you to run through the gates of hell. You kick the door open and go in first, and we'll follow you in. And I took that as, and to think about it. I guess that does sum up how I want to be looked at too, that I'm willing to do the job as well. I'm willing to be there with you. At time, you have to stand on your own, but we're all going to do this together, and I'm going to give you the tools to succeed.
Very good. Darn, that's a pretty good way to end. That's well said. Pat, it's been a delight to see you. Thank goodness for this technology that we can actually see each other. Not sure about the added hair growth on the chin, but I'm not going to play hardball with you on that. But I'm grateful for the time you took. I'll look forward to hearing your boss's feedback on this conversation. I'm sure he'll enjoy listening to it, and it'll reaffirm why he brought you onto his team for sure. You are a great leader. And again, it was very easy for me to write the words I wrote about you, where I described you as a guy that gets soft skills, because you do.
Thank you.
And I can remember specifically the place that it was all very much cemented for me. And that's when you had a group of your guys at the time when you were still with Swanson and Youngdale, and you joined them in a 2-day training program that I delivered at DC 82. And the way you interacted with them, and also the way you chimed in when we talked about the soft skills topics that were contained in that 2-day program, it was very, very clear to me. And it was that day that in my mind, I said, this guy gets this stuff. And as long as you continue to get it, it's going to bode well for your future as a growing leader. And I wish you all the best in what you do, and look forward to seeing you in person sometime, maybe soon.
Yeah.
Who knows?
Well, thank you, Dennis. The times where I did sit through your sessions, it was just good added information and kind of an affirmation of what the other leaders and mentors I've had say. And to hear this out now being spoken and produced out there publicly, that this is our industry and this is how we're going to succeed, by taking care of each other, by learning to communicate and work well. And I look forward to seeing you too, hopefully sometime in the near future.
Yeah, well, definitely not in the middle of winter.
You're not going to come up in January?
No.
Dang.
No, sorry. Pat, thank you so much.
All right. Take care. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of the Soft as Steel podcast with your host, Dennis Duran. Dennis is the author of Soft as Steel and a leading speaker and trainer for organizations across many industries and verticals. To learn more about the work Dennis is doing to activate soft skills in the workplace, contact him at DennisDuranSpeaking.com. Be sure to check out his book, Soft as Steel, on Amazon or wherever books are sold. You can subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or wherever you'd like to get your podcasts. And please remember to share this episode with your friends, colleagues, and anyone you feel would benefit from the conversation. We'll see you next time on the Soft as Steel podcast with Dennis Duran.